My divorce and all the crazy stuff that went down about 6 years ago, but it's like this crazy movie that still pops into my head every now and then. Back then, like a clueless dude, I thought everything was awesome in my relationship with my wife Olivia and our two awesome kids. We were hitting our 8th year of marriage and our kids were 5, Noah Jr. and 4. It's wild how things can go from great to chaos in the blink of an eye. Ava and my wife were heading into the 7th month of pregnancy, expecting our daughter. I adore our kids, and the thought of another little one running around had me absolutely thrilled. Earlier that year, my wife had unexpectedly quit her job as a marketing director to focus entirely on being a wife and mom. Until then, there hadn't been any problems with her balancing work and family life, and she was doing an amazing job as both a wife and a mom. The unexpected twist hit me like a bolt out of the blue, and we'll get into the details later. I'm a trained biologist, rocking it in a lab for a life sciences company. I rake in some sweet cash, and I absolutely dig what I do. As far as I was concerned, our marriage and family were top-notch, and I couldn't have been happier. Then one day after work, I was going through the mail at home, tossing out a bunch of letters and whatnot. There was a letter from a legal firm addressed to my wife. At first, I thought it was just another piece of junk mail that we got a lot of at the house. I was going to put it in a pile to shred, but decided to open it. In the envelope was a letter from an attorney representing the wife of a former co-worker. She had filed for divorce, and according to the letter, she, the plaintiff, named my wife in the divorce, and was also planning to bring a potential alienation of affection lawsuit against my wife. I had never heard the term before, so I had to go online and look it up. I don't have to explain to you how I felt after reading the letter. My perfect fairy tale marriage and life had been blown to smithereens. The reason behind my wife's sudden job quit earlier in the year now started to click in a logical way. The shocking part? She was out shopping with the kids, and when they got back, I just played it cool. We whipped up dinner and had a seemingly ordinary evening. Keep in mind, we used to enforce a strict bedtime of 10:30 p.m. for our kids back then. My wife and I then would normally stay up until 11:30 or so on weekdays after my kids went to sleep that night. My wife and I were sitting next to each other on the sofa, and I took her hand and said to come here with me. We walked into our office, which is just off the family room, and I closed the door, opened the drawer, and took out the letter and handed it to her. She proceeded to read the letter and immediately started crying, dropped the letter, and hugged me around the waist, burying her head deep into my chest. She was holding on for dear life and sobbing, saying how sorry she was. She was getting very loud, and I didn't want our kids to be disturbed, so I calmly told her to keep it down for that reason. I asked her to explain, but she wouldn't let go or stop crying, and I couldn't gently pry her away. So I just let her cry and hold on to me for what seemed like an hour, but was actually closer to about 15 minutes. I then asked her if she could release me as I couldn't breathe, and she eventually let go and backed away. She then just started talking, saying, "Ethan, you've got to forgive me. It was a one-time mistake that I will never make again. I'm so sorry for what I've done to you and our kids, and will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I then asked her to explain what happened. She said on her final business trip for the company, she and the co-worker were stranded in Boston overnight due to a snowstorm, which was true. Many businesses there were shut down due to the storm, and the hotel where they were staying was nearly empty. They walked over to a bar that remained open and got dinner, and had several drinks, and talked about the successful presentation they had just given, and about their families. When they got back to the hotel, she invited him over to her room as she wanted to give him a physical copy of the presentation to read through as he didn't have one. She said she entered the room and he stood at the doorway holding open the door. She walked over and gave in the presentation. Then she said, out of the blue, he grabbed her and kissed her. She said she was stunned, but instead of resisting, she kissed him back and they retreated into the room. "And you know what comes next?" she said after the act. She immediately recognized the terrible thing she had done, and so did he. They swore to each other that it would never happen again, and they would keep it a secret as they both proclaimed their love for their spouses. She said she then took a long bath and used multiple cans of soda water in the minibar as a douche, confirming to me they did not use protection. She revealed that she was mentally devastated to the point where she impulsively quit her job to fully commit to being the best wife and mom possible, acknowledging that having intimacy with another man and keeping it from me were both unforgivable. She pleaded for a chance, insisting it was a one-time slip-up, both before and after the regrettable incident. Our marriage has been fantastic. I then quickly realized the child she was carrying may not be mine. I told her I was not going to do anything rash immediately, but explained this is not something I can forgive or ever forget. I then told her I want a paternity test done on the unborn child. This sent her over the edge, and she fell to her knees sobbing, saying she was sure the baby she was carrying was definitely mine. As she only had one encounter with her coworker, had touched multiple times, and had been with me nearly every night as we were trying for a third child. The final statement is true. I told her the test must occur, as I would not take responsibility for the child until I was 100% sure it was mine. She eventually agreed and said she would do anything I asked her to do to stay married. I then told her we would keep this matter from our young children, but would need to tell our parents tomorrow so they know what's going on. She begged me not to make her do this, but I insisted, and she again said she would do whatever it takes to keep me. The next day we met with our parents, shuttling our kids between their houses to keep them away from the discussion. All four of them were visibly upset and sad. Throughout the discussion, my wife couldn't speak as she was crying, saying how sorry and remorseful she is for her actions. She vowed to do whatever it took to salvage our marriage and family. However, in our conversation with our parents, I uttered two statements that hit my wife hard. Firstly, I declared that what she had done felt like relationship treason against me and our kids. Due to this, I confessed uncertainty about whether I could continue being married to her. Second, I explained, if it turns out the unborn child is not mine, she would be immediately moving in with her parents, and we would immediately divorce. I went on to explain that plan to meet with an attorney regardless of what we eventually decide on Monday. I made my wife call her OBGYN with me at her side and asked her to order a prenatal paternity test. The doctor said this wasn't something that she had ever ordered for a patient, as the cost is normally not covered by insurance. She explained it can be costly, and that they could just do a simple test after birth that would be less expensive and likely covered by insurance. My wife explained to her that both she and I wanted the test, and the doctor placed the order without inquiring further. The earliest we could get in was on Friday. That week my wife was a mental mess, and to be honest, so was I. We were still sleeping in the same bed. No intimacy though, but I did hold her to sleep every night, and she was attached to me from the time I came home until we went to bed. She was so over the top. My kids kept asking us why mommy was hugging me all the time. On Wednesday, my wife had a call with the law firm representing her coworker's wife and their divorce. The attorney requested that she come involuntarily to have a discussion with them about the affair, and that this would be considered favorably by the plaintiff. My wife clarified that it was a one-time occurrence and expressed reluctance to meet with them. After ending the call, she sought my advice on what to do, but I flatly told her it wasn't my problem and advised her to consult an attorney. When she inquired about using the attorney I had met with and chosen the day before, I informed her that it wasn't an option because the firm was representing me. She then asked if I would accompany her to meetings with potential attorneys and to a meeting with the plaintiff's attorneys, and I told her I definitely would not. She cried and retreated to the bedroom. The following Thursday we got the results of the prenatal paternity test back. A notice was sent electronically to my inbox with a link to their site where I had already set up an account in preparation. My wife and I nervously sat down in front of the computer as I opened it. We were both nervous wrecks, and she was crying and tears also spilled down my cheeks. We opened the link, and it took a minute or so to read down to where the results were, and the child she was carrying was not mine. My wife turned and threw herself on the bed crying, and I ran down the steps, grabbed my keys and phone, and just took off in my car. Our kids were at her parents' as we were expecting the results of the test, and didn't want them to be witness to our potential responses. About 15 minutes later, my wife called crying and asked where I was, and I told her I just needed to be alone, and would return in a few hours. She asked if I could come back now as she was really losing it and having a breakdown, and I told her no, just relax, and we'll talk when I get back. I dialed up both sets of parents and spilled the shocking news. Tears streamed down my face as I shared the heartbreaking details with them. They were visibly upset and pressed me about my next move. I laid it out for them, just like I mentioned earlier. I planned to ask Olivia to temporarily move back to her parents' place. I couldn't bear the thought of our kids getting caught up in this crazy drama. I will then take steps to expedite the divorce process, and will also have my attorney file a legal challenge to the assumed paternity. Based on the paternity marriage laws in my state, my attorney had previously suggested this as a possible action so that I do not get defaulted on the birth certificate. I told them with this terrible news, the cheating and the lying. There was no way I could ever remain in a relationship with her. I then told them not to call Olivia or discuss this with her. If she happens to call them until I had a chance to talk to her that evening, they agreed. My next call was to my attorney, where I gave the green light to move forward with the divorce and the challenge of paternity. I went home and it was now 9:30 p.m., a full 6 hours after we learned of the results. My wife greeted me at the door and hugged me crying. I waddled with her, still clutching me over to the sofa where we sat down. I explained that she would be temporarily moving in with her parents until after the birth of her child, and that I would be filing for divorce and selling the family home. She just cried and said, "No, no, please." I told her this was necessary, as I didn't want our kids to be witness to the drama that would exist between us if we were living together. She promised there would be no drama, but I insisted. She then said something which haunts me to this day. She said, "I will have a termination procedure as I don't want this child if it means losing you." I took her hands and I told her to look at me and listen to what I was about to say. I told her the baby she was carrying was an innocent angel who didn't ask to be part of the mess her birth parents created. I said the baby deserves to be born and to have a chance to live a beautiful life. My wife did a sudden flip-flop, claiming she could never end the pregnancy, but floated the idea of putting the baby up for adoption if it meant keeping me. I urged her to have a serious talk with the baby's father, emphasizing that while adoption can be a beautiful choice in the right circumstances, going through with this decision might haunt her forever, and it wouldn't magically fix our marriage. My wife said she was never going to speak with the baby's bio-father again, and that the only man whose opinion she cares about is mine. She said she will have the baby raise it and not ask that I support or interact with the child unless I want to. Well, I was very saddened to press about the whole thing. I was relieved that the innocent child's future was somewhat secured. We spent the rest of the night lying in bed, holding each other with my wife crying in the morning. I told her it was time, and we both showered, got dressed, got breakfast, and she packed her suitcase while crying. She asked me if there was any way I would consider letting her stay in the house, and I just said no. She must do this for our kids. We had a final discussion where I explained to her that I would not be with her for the birth, nor would I have any role in the child's life from a parental standpoint, but would treat the child warmly when she was older, as she would be a sister to my children, and that during the child's infant and toddler years, I would not be interacting with her as I thought this would be best emotionally for all of us. I dropped her off at her parents and picked up my kids. I explained to them that Mommy will be staying with Grandma and Grandpa until she has the baby as she needs rest, but they will visit her often. They were fine with this. They kissed their mom and grandparents, and we went home. My wife called and messaged me daily, but I would only respond to messages pertaining to our kids. She plunged into a really intense, gloomy depression, and her parents were freaking out, fearing she might lose the baby since she wasn't eating or getting enough rest. They begged for my assistance, so I made the bold move to take her out for a walk in the darkest hours of her emotional struggle. We're talking deep talks here. I laid it all out, telling her that she had to take care of herself and the baby. I stressed the importance of being strong for our kids and the new addition to our family. She said she just can't do anything, except think of me and how she ruined everything, and that she just wants to crawl into a dark closet and never come out. I told her that while she has destroyed our relationship and our marriage, that she still is a great person whose kids need her to be strong and happy. I told her she should focus all of her energy on her health and the health of her new baby and be the best mother she can be. We hugged it out for more than an hour, and she promised she would do this for me. The following day, she had a meeting with the attorneys who would represent her lover's wife. She met with them and had her mother and an attorney with her. She texted me and said that while the meeting was very difficult, she was glad it happened. She went on to say the plaintiff agreed to drop the alienation suit in exchange for a sworn affidavit of her admitting to the details of the affair and her pregnancy, which they didn't know about until the meeting. Needless to say, they were pleased learning this. My wife gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Grace, not her real name but similar-sounding name. Flash forward 5 months and our divorce was finalized. My wife didn't want anything. No alimony, no assets, nothing. She thought giving up everything would further demonstrate to me how much she loved me and that she may get me back. I insisted that we split our assets 50-50 and that she'd get alimony for the norm, but requested she'd give me primary custody 60% plus of our kids. She agreed with the condition that I wouldn't relocate more than 35 miles from our current city. I was cool with that since I had no intention of living anywhere else. Getting our kids settled in the new setup turned out to be a breeze. But here's where it gets tricky. They couldn't wrap their heads around why I wasn't considered Grace's father and why I never spent time with or held her. They innocently thought I should totally adore her because she's so tiny and adorable. I have to be honest, hearing this broke my heart. I had to explain to them that Grace has another daddy who lives far away. By the way, my wife's lover's divorce was finalized a month after ours. He has since moved to Dallas for a job, and his wife and 9-year-old daughter moved back to Seattle where she is from. She took him to the cleaners financially. Also, he never once reached out to my ex-wife to inquire about his child, though he is fully aware she exists. Fast forward about 3.5 years, and the sting of my divorce and betrayal was mostly behind me. My kids were doing great and have adjusted well. My ex-wife, on the other hand, has struggled terribly. Initially, she was not bonding with Grace, and her parents had to step in and help raise the child during the first year of her life. During this time, she also started withdrawing from our kids and fell back into the dark depths of her mind as a result of the destruction of our marriage. Going to therapy 3 times a week for 2 years and taking several medications helped her rebound, and after 2 years, she was back to near normal and was back to being a great mom to her 3 kids. Throughout this time, she and I only communicated through email about our kids, but she would send me emails 2 to 3 times per week saying how much she loved me, how sorry she was, and that she would do anything to have me back. She has offered me a friend with benefits relationship many times, offering me anything. I wanted to get back into an intimate relationship with her. I never responded to any of the messages and never discussed the contents. In one of the few brief face-to-face conversations we had during this period, I did, however, let her know that I did receive all of her messages and have read every one of them. Her mom told me that in her mind she still feels that she is married to me, and these messages are a way for her to keep that connection, which has helped her get through with her depression. One day in early summer, I planned to pick up my kids on Wednesday and take them to the zoo for a special event they were having. This went down on a day when they were hanging with their mom, but we were both cool with being flexible about custody time. I rolled up to the house to pick them up and they dashed outside, hopped in the car, and strapped themselves in. Just as I was cruising out of the driveway, my daughter suddenly screams, "Dad, there's Grace!" I glanced up and spotted this adorable little girl with curly blonde hair standing at the edge of the driveway. She was waving with one hand and wiping away tears with the other. My son then said, "She's crying, Dad, because she wants to go with us." I stopped the car and told my kids to wait here and I will go talk to Grace. I knelt down and asked her name and she said it was Grace. I told her my name was Ethan and asked why she was crying. She looked at me, sucking her thumb, and said she wants to go with me to the zoo. I said, "You do?" And she said yes. I then asked if I could pick her up to talk to her and she said yes. I then asked if she could show me her pretty smile, and she smiled a big smile with those perfect baby teeth which melted my heart. I said, "Let's go ask Mommy if you can go with us." Now keep in mind, up to this point, I had never seen Grace other than a couple of pictures of her being held by my kids just after she was born. And as previously mentioned, I only had a few brief face-to-face conversations with my wife since our divorce. I knocked hard on the door and heard footsteps scurrying. I called my ex-wife and when she picked up she exclaimed, "Oh my God, Grace, Ethan." Then she just lost it and started bawling. I chimed in saying, "Olivia Grace wants to hit the zoo with us and I want to take her." She questioned, "Are you sure?" Without missing a beat, I confirmed, "Yep." Turning to Grace, I asked if she promised to be a good girl and she nodded in agreement. Olivia thought about changing Grace's clothes, but I shut that down, telling her she looked awesome and just to grab some comfy walking shoes and a jacket. We then walked out to the car, and Olivia installed her car seat in the back and sat Grace in it, all the while crying happy tears. Olivia then waved us off, crying as we backed out of the driveway. My son then said, "Dad, this made Mom very happy. My kids were so excited to have Grace with us." My daughter said, "Grace is a good girl, Dad. She won't be any trouble. I'll watch her." My son followed up by saying, "Dad, you're really going to like her. She's nice." I looked back at Grace in my rearview mirror and said, "I like her already." And she gave me another big smile. We had a great day at the zoo. The plan was to stay for 2 hours, but we ended up staying for nearly 5 hours and ate a pizza dinner there. Grace was afraid of the animals, so I carried her the entire time, which I didn't mind. At the end of the day, she was so exhausted she fell asleep in my arms for the final half hour of our visit, then slept all the way home in her car seat. I fell in love with Grace that day, something I never imagined doing. I suddenly didn't see her as an affair baby, but as a sibling to my kids and a little girl who needed a father, and frankly saw me as a dad who wanted another daughter. The next day I sent an email to my ex-wife stating, I'd like for Grace to be able to spend time with her kids while they were with me, and wanted to see if she would be open to entering into a legal agreement, which would enable this without any obligation to me from a paternity standpoint. Olivia was totally pumped and claimed we didn't need any fancy legal agreement. I could just snatch Grace whenever. But despite her saying that, I wasn't taking any chances. I had my attorney whip up an agreement, and Olivia wasted no time signing it. Now get this. Noah, Ava, and Grace were hanging with me from Friday through Monday, then flipping to Olivia from Tuesday through Thursday. It's wild. Grace got super close to me, and I found myself getting really attached to her in no time. She would always make a point to sit by me when we would watch TV or eat at the table. Noah started calling her my shadow, as she was always following me, and would often choose to stay back with me while her sister and brother went out to play. Then about a year later, on a Tuesday afternoon, something occurred that was so emotional for me. I knew I had to adopt her. She was now in preschool and had painted a picture for me to hang on my wall. She was so excited about giving it to me that she had her grandpa call me from his phone to talk to me. She told me about the picture, and I told her, "I can't wait to see you on Friday when I pick her up about a half hour later." I heard a light knock on my front screen door while I was working in my home office. I got up and walked out to the door, and there was Grace at my door holding up the picture. I went to the door and let her in and looked around and asked, "Who brought you here, Grace?" She said, "I ran over here to give you this picture. I've got street crossing skills now. Get this." Grandma and Grandpa revealed that she figured out the whole route to my place and went on this crazy mission, running or walking nearly 3/4 of a mile and crossing a hectic 6-lane boulevard just to hand me a picture. I couldn't help it. I got all teary-eyed and pulled her into a massive hug. Then I had to hit up my ex-father-in-law and be like, "Don't freak out." But Grace was at my house. He was horrified hearing this as she was in her room playing while he and my ex-mother-in-law were just out back, planting a shrub and doing some mulching. My ex-wife was out grocery shopping at the time, so Grace apparently just snuck away just to bring me that picture. I told my ex-father-in-law I would keep her here with me for a while and bring her back later. I then took Grace out to a frame shop and had the picture mounted and framed. She was so excited, and I told her that when I get the picture back, I'll be hanging it on my dining room wall. Next, we stopped for some dinner at a favorite restaurant of hers that specializes in chicken fingers. During the dinner, I gently explained to her not to run away again and to always let Mummy and her grandparents know where she is at all times when they are watching her, and to let me know if she wants to come and visit me. She said, "Okay, I will." I said, "Do you promise?" And she said yes. That evening when I brought her back, I came into the house and told Olivia I wanted to speak with her about an idea. I have. I then asked Olivia to come with me and took a car ride with her to our favorite park bench. And there I told her I would like to explore adopting Grace. She was of course overjoyed hearing this and hugged me, showing me her approval. We've hugged it out again for a good hour on the bench, and she said, "You don't know how I hoped and prayed you would be her father." The next day I met with my attorney who started the process. We didn't need to engage the biofather. As in our state, a child is considered to be abandoned. If a parent has not been part of the child's life for a period of time, I believe it's 12 months. 1 year later, at the age of 6 years, Grace officially became my daughter. The adoption happened 10 years ago, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. I now have 3 great kids, and I love them all equally, something I didn't think was possible. I'm also remarried now and madly in love with a wonderful woman. We have our first child on the way, due in 4 months. Yes, number 4. My dream was always to have 5 kids, so I'm well on my way. But I'm 52 now, so I've got to hurry. My ex-wife Olivia and I maintain a very friendly relationship, even though our 2 oldest are well into their college years now, and little Grace is now 16. Believe it or not, for years, Olivia held out hope that I would one day come back to her, especially after I adopted Grace. But that never happened. Lord knows I thought about it 1,000 times or more during this period, and was very close to doing so. However, while I'll always have a deep love for Olivia, I could never get past what she did to me and my 3 kids. Olivia is still single today, and has not dated anyone since our divorce. She works a little job in a museum and lives humbly. She tells everyone that she has no interest in ever remarrying, as she once had the best husband, and anyone else would never be able to measure up. She's fully dedicated her life to her 3 kids. While it's nice hearing this compliment, I do wish she would find someone to make her happy, as she's a good woman in spite of the terrible things she did nearly 17 years ago. Believe it or not, I too hadn't dated anyone until I met my new wife 6 years ago. To be honest, I too thought I'd be able to reconcile with Olivia at some point after things started getting serious with my then girlfriend. I met with Olivia to let her know it was a very emotional conversation for both of us, but she understood and gave me her blessing. To this day, I often find myself thinking about Olivia and how one terrible decision she made upended her life, the lives of me and my kids, and the lives of her lover's wife and child. The whole thing still gets to me. But then I think, hey, you can't change the past, and things have worked out pretty well for all of us. All things considered, life goes on. That's my story. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe.